Hey, welcome back to another episode of Projecting Grandeur. I'm your host, Ron Dichter. Thank you to all of you that have followed and subscribed to the show. It's much appreciated. Today I want to talk about the concept of building culture within your organization and your company. Building culture is one of those things that is, I don't think, talked about enough, but becomes so important for the business and really what you're trying to accomplish. Let's face it, there are a lot of businesses that have very similar products, services, offerings, but varying levels of success. And obviously execution and the product nuances make a difference. But really, I think the most important and impactful part of building a business is the culture in which you're creating. Getting people to not only believe in the mission of the business, but believe in you as a leader is all about building culture and all about making sure that you're sending the right message, that you're sending the right kind of vibe that you want within your organization. And there's just not enough time that's talked about how to do that. I believe that the concept of building culture is one that the reason it's probably not talked about is because it's hard to teach, right? There's a lot of times you hear somebody say they have the it factor or they just have that thing, and it's hard to quantify what that thing is. And I think building culture is a lot like that, where you don't necessarily know what the intangible is that ultimately makes a business or a person successful, but there are some basic concepts and some basic things that people can do that are really going to help set the tone for their business. So let's break this down. So when I build businesses, and let me just kind of qualify myself for those of you that don't know me, one of my companies was a company called EMG, and it was one that was a payments company. I started it in my early 20s and grew that business to over $100 million in sales. We had over 350 employees operating in 28 offices. And so it was a very important business for us to be able to maintain culture because, we had these people spread out amongst 28 offices. I couldn't have FaceTime with them all the time. And this predated, having Teams and Zoom meetings as kind of a normal part of the business. Like this just wasn't a thing back then. And so the way that we built culture is that we did a few things. So first and foremost, I would not ask anybody to do something that I wouldn't do myself. And so as we took on new positions, new departments, I would take a roll your sleeves up mentality, and I would go sit shoulder to shoulder with either an existing team member trying out something new or a new team that we're bringing in. And I would literally sit shoulder to shoulder with them and help figure out how we're going to sell, how we're going to market, how we're going to service this new thing we're doing. And then kind of on that same note, one of the things that I was known for is that as I went to these different offices, oftentimes what I would say to somebody is I say, let me try your seat. And whether it be a sales call where I asked the sales rep, I said, let me have your headset, give me the next call, dial me a number, I used to say. And I would literally make a cold call, and I didn't do it to try to show up my team, because honestly, they were all better than me. They did that day in and day out, and I just kind of tapped in from time to time. But what I wanted to show them is that I'm willing to do it, and I'm willing to figure it out with them. I also used to do this with my customer support team. I would go sit in a cubicle, and I would say, let me take the next call in the queue. And I would try to understand what kind of challenges they're facing. And what that showed them is that I'm not above what their role is. I'm willing to do exactly what I'm asking them to do. I will actually go out and do it. And I think that that's a really important part in sending the message in the company, and that the leader is not going to just tell you what to do, but they're actually willing to do the work that it takes to make the business successful with you. So that's one thing that I did. The other thing that I did is I had a very rigid schedule where each day at 9 a.m., most of my staff got in between 8 and 8:30, and at 9 a.m. every day I would do a daily meeting. And at another company of mine called Blue Dog, we had one office with about 60 people in it, And I would always, every day, 9 a.m., everybody would come down to the break room. We'd congregate around. We'd have a really quick 15-minute rah-rah meeting. I'd talk about the wins from yesterday. I would celebrate successes from within the organization, give a shout out to, the top support people, the top sales people, had little prizes that we would do, and we would just have a fun little engaging meeting. And by doing that, you get people out of their comfort zone, you get people, kind of rallying behind the cause and the mission, and you're constantly reinforcing what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and people start to really get excited about it. Another thing that I think about building culture that's really important is that you gotta work hard, but you have to be willing to play too. And play and work can be mixed together. And finding fun and engaging ways to get your team excited to take a break. And I don't mean, like the traditional, let's go bowling, let's go see a movie, let's go have an after hours. Like really more, fun and creative things. And one of the things that we did at another one of my companies is we used to have a quarterly Olympics. And the quarterly Olympics was basically, this fun little competitive, office games that we would do. And it was silly things, like, collecting staples and, going around and making different images out of staple art and having judging, or, having a bowling, down the center of the cubicles, and just kind of fun stuff that people got engaged. And again, my point behind it isn't the actual activities. My point behind it is, having these team building activities that let your team know that, look, you're not just about, business and making money. You also want to have fun with your team. The other part about culture that I think is really important to do is making sure that you're consistent. If people don't believe in your mission, and then your mission changes constantly to where you're flip-flopping and changing the way in which you're either running the business without explanation, or you're changing job descriptions for people and changing roles without explaining to them the why, that can be really deflating, and it hurts your culture. And one of the things that I've constantly done is explain the why behind things. We're doing this, and here's the reason why we're doing it. And while I give an opportunity for the team to opine about, maybe they have an opinion about it, but what I don't necessarily do is, make changes over it, but I listen to my team. And so I think as you start to build culture, you just have to be a hands-on leader. You have to be willing to, show your team that you're not above any specific role. You have to find ways to engage them, outside of the workplace, but in a fun environment that still, creates team building. I like having daily FaceTime with the team, whether you're a remote workforce and you're doing it via, a video service, or whether you're in person and you're meeting with everyone in person. I think that daily interaction is important. For anyone who has listened to this podcast, I'm not an advocate of meeting to meet, but those meetings have purpose, and they're quick and they're succinct, and they get people excited, and they always feel engaged. So again, these are just some tips, but building culture, it's just something you got to do. You have to, remember why you're building the business in the first place. Remember that your business itself is only as good as your team, and you need to treat your team like family. You need to engage them. Doesn't mean you need to be, cross the line between business and personal, but you can still have a fun, engaging environment where people rally around a cause. They need to understand the why behind things, and what you'll find is if you're consistent, your team will respect you for it, they'll appreciate it, and they'll go to the end of the earth for you. So I hope you find this helpful. Thank you again for tuning in. If you've already shared this with some of your closest friends, I appreciate it. For those of you that haven't, remember, sharing is caring. Have a great day.